As I just talked about previously, the government yesterday announced, for reasons, there's the question, for reasons of what? That they were going to make a significant, or at least the police commissioner was going to be making a significant investment in combating gang crime in this country. And indeed in beefing up police resource with a specific gang unit, and also with regional boosting of police resources to attack gangs in regional areas, I guess places like Bay of Plenty where they might be prominent, or maybe South Auckland or something like that. The response politically across the spectrum was exactly as you would expect. The Labour Party said, well, we're already doing this, so no big deal there. And Te Pāti Māori said, this is an attack on the Maori people in general. So it was sort of like almost every political party acted in exactly the way that you would expect them to do so. Possibly the most interesting response, as I've already mentioned this morning in the introduction of this, was the response to New Zealand Police Association. Who said, yeah, well, wait on, where are the resources? And I think that's a fair question. And whether are the resources going to be there to do anything? And then the next issue, of course, is will it make a blind bit of difference anyhow to proliferation of gang activity and membership in this country, particularly that we've noticed exemplified, amplified, and become much more prominent as a result of all the 501s being expelled from Australia. Joining us to talk about this, a sociologist from the Canterbury University, but also somebody who's written on this extensively academically, and with whom I have been in direct conflict in the past. Dr. Jarrod Gilbert from Canterbury University joins us now. Dr. Gilbert, welcome to the show. Lovely to have you on.
Good to speak with you, Michael, and it's always a delightful conflict.
Let's just go back on that, eh? The first time that you and I ever met each other and clashed would have been when I was trying to bring in that gang patch ban in Wanganui, and you were one of, I think, only 2 or 3, along with the Hells Angels, people who argued against it. So we go back a long way, Jarrod. Oops, Jarrod's fallen off. Josh? Or have I fallen off? Thank you. Jarrod's fallen off. So we'll go and get him back. And I'm sure it won't be for any other reason than there was some sort of technical snafu. But as we go and get him, yes, that's right. So here I was trying to get the gang patch legislation through in Wanganui, and Dr. Gilbert he wasn't a doctor then, but he was of one of, I think, only 3. The Hells Angels were the other ones. And there was a Dr. Gilbert and somebody else. The Police Association were in support, just quietly, of that gang patch legislation at the time. But, hopefully we have Dr. Gilbert back. And he now has gone on, as I said, to an academic career at Canterbury University. I think, in actual fact, and I'll just try and get his bio for you while we're tracking him down. All right. You haven't been assassinated, Jarrod? You're still there, mate?
I am still here. No assassination just yet. I'm not sure what happened there.
Okay, that's all right. Now, you're the author of Patched, The History of Gangs in New Zealand. You are working for Independent Research Solutions. What are they?
That's a research company that I set up many moons ago. So I'm at the university as well. That's what I do my consultancy through.
Is that your primary job as a senior lecturer at Canterbury University?
Yeah, well, it is, I guess, yeah.
Have they made you an associate professor yet, or you've done something wrong?
Jobs, to be honest. No, just a senior lecturer at this stage. It's kind of paperwork for promotions too much for me.
Listen, I've followed you because you've been, I'll be very honest with you, I thought you were an apologist for gangs and something of a familiar initially. But I've noticed reading you over the last few years, and particularly I think since the 501s have come into New Zealand, that you now, listen, I'll say that your views have matured. You'll probably say that I've got more benign in my own countenance. But that the reality is that you accept now, or you do accept, that we have a gang problem in this country.
Well, I think that the gangs have always been a problem to some degree. If you think back to the 70s and 80s, the gunshots that we're seeing in recent times sort of pale in comparison, those big wars back then. So they've always been a problem. I guess where you and I perhaps have just disagreed somewhat is just around some of the nuance that, not all gangs are the same, So some are heavily involved in, say, organised criminal activity. Others are more sort of overt, that sort of street-level violence and things. And even within chapters of the same gang, there are different cultures and things. So I guess it's like anything. The more you look at it, the more complex it gets. But, gee, you'll never catch me saying that the gangs aren't a law and order problem, because they most certainly are.
Well, let's go, because gangs and organised criminal activity, which is where pretty much the police came from yesterday. Mark Mitchell, obviously, is the police minister as well. Which are the gangs that you look at, Jarrod, and go, these are just fronts at the end of the day for organised criminal activity? These are smart professional criminals.
Well, actually, I'm glad you raised that, because this is one of the significant changes we've seen. I talked about the violence and things in the 70s and 80s, and that was largely around sort of non-utilitarian things. It was around turf and pride and we're better than you. But and joining the gang was sort of a more simple understanding then. It was about brotherhood largely, because these people come from families that have been so appalling that they don't have the sort of familial relationships that perhaps you and I enjoy. And so they go out searching for them. And the other thing that they joined for, the other reason they joined, was a sense of status, that if you were growing up in those sorts of conditions and you looked around and went, Jesus, I'm not going to be able to succeed anywhere else, but if I put this patch on, I become something. What I think we can add to that now, and that is that there's an opportunity to make money primarily through the methamphetamine trade. So suddenly you've got this other draw card in there now where people say, well, I can actually earn incredibly big and fast money. So that has become a significant part within the gangs. But again, just on that nuance, that some members are up to their eyeballs in it and some aren't. So it's not all equal.
Having said that, though, if I join, I'm looking at the number of people who are gang members or gang associates in New Zealand prisons at the moment. And I think every gang is very healthily represented indeed. You have to be committed a serious crime these days to get to prison. So one would assume that if I'm going to join an organisation in which a good proportion of my membership are up to their eyes, as you say, in criminal activity, I'm walking into that particular gang with my eyes well and truly open, aren't I?
Yeah, without question, although there is... that's absolutely right. But there is a chicken and egg thing there as well, though, that it's not... You're not getting people from across the spectrum joining the gangs. They tend to be highly criminogenic folk themselves. And this is the other thing with the crime data around the gangs, that if a gang member, for example... take that Ponsonby shooting. Terrible, wanton violence, and a guy's lost his life. That guy was in a gang, but it wasn't really a gang crime. Do you know what I mean? Or if a gang member beats up his wife or kid or whatever, that's a gang member who's involved, but that crime would kind of occur with or without the gang. Do you get what I mean?
I understand what you're saying, but the response of the gang to that was to then, in convoy, travel to Taupo, retrieve the body, and then give him some form of almost hero's Valkyrie send-off. I mean, at that point, that gang associated itself with the crime, didn't they?
Well, yeah, and they're not endearing themselves to the public, are they? But look, I guess that's a kin. And again, here, Jesus, I'm dancing on that pin of gang apology, so excuse me. But it's kind of a kin. I guess I'd see that to some degree, that what a family would do. Like if a family member dies, even if they've done something bloody terrible, they still rally around them. So it's kind of, I think they would see it like that. But you're right, it's not a great look, is it?
No. Okay. Gang memberships proliferated. So, as you quite rightly say, and gangs actually went under the radar. In the 70s, Rob Muldoon, as you'll be well aware, tried to make some sort of effort, and he thought, well, if I give these Maori boys, and they were mostly Maori boys and Black Power and Mongrel Mob, a job, and there were the group employment liaison scheme, I think, was set up at the time in the 80s and 90s to give them a job. Then they won't need to do crime anymore. They'll become decent members of the community and problem solved. Why did that fail?
Well, those schemes were actually set up by Muldoon for they were project employment schemes or whatever they were called, PEP schemes or whatever. Yeah. So they were set up for unemployment generally because Muldoon thought that unemployment was only going to be a blip and soon we would return. So his idea was put people to work so they don't lose the work ethic. Just make work schemes. And the gangs, and you're right, jails was set up to make sure the gangs were utilising those. And for a short period, at least as what I can garner from the media reports at the time, they did have a reasonably positive impact on some of the public violence that was so much of a concern back then. And they were praised.